Um, what if I told you that the most powerful, I guess, insurmountable weapon a massive tech giant possesses isn't some brilliant new line of code?
Right, or like a revolutionary piece of hardware or something.
Exactly. Or even some secret algorithm. What if their ultimate weapon is actually just, well, human laziness?
It's a really profound shift, right? Because we usually imagine market dominance as something that's actively forced on us, like a company twisting our arm.
Yeah, totally.
But sometimes dominance is really just paving the path of least resistance and just waiting for us to walk down it.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at that ultimate weapon in tech, which is human laziness. And to understand it, we are cracking open the U.S. government's landmark antitrust case against Google.
Yeah, which is a fascinating case.
It really is. We're being guided today by a Substack post from EconWorks. It's part of their Effing Antitrust series, and it's titled, How Tech Defaults Shape Competition, What the U.S. v. Google Search Case May Mean for Consumers.
It's a great piece, very thorough.
Right. And our mission today is to decode this 2020 Department of Justice lawsuit. We're going to explore how those seemingly harmless, completely ignorable default settings on your phone might actually be the ultimate competitive moat.
And this is so crucial to understand because it fundamentally changes how we talk about monopolies. For, over a century, our legal framework has been completely obsessed with factories and physical supply chains.
Price tag.
Exactly, price tags. This case forces us to abandon that whole industrial mindset and look right at our screens, and more importantly, look at our own daily habits.
Because when most of us hear the word antitrust, we immediately picture those industrial age monopolies, right?
Like Standard Oil tycoons,
Yeah.
the railroad barons.
Yeah, the guys with the top hats and monocles. The harm in those scenarios was glaringly obvious. One company violently corners the market, they crush their rivals, and then they just jack up the prices on you, the consumer.
It was all about price gouging. That's the classic textbook definition of antitrust harm. You pay more money for a worse product because you literally have nowhere else to go.
Because the barriers to entry were physical.
Yeah.
You couldn't just, build a competing transcontinental railroad overnight in your garage.
Right. The capital required was insane.
But this case, the US v. Google case, it flips that entire framework on its head.
Yeah.
The product we're talking about here, General Search Services, it's completely free.
You don't pay a single dime.
Right. You don't pay anything to search the web. So the government isn't arguing about prices at all. They're arguing about how this company shapes human behavior at an unimaginable scale. Okay, let's unpack this. Because as I was reading through the EconWorks breakdown, an analogy popped into my head about how this actually assumes in practice.
Oh, I love analogies. Let's hear it.
Okay, so imagine you sign a lease and you move into a brand new apartment. And when you walk into the living room, there's already a specific brand of television bolted firmly to the wall.
Okay, bolted to the wall.
Bolted. It's plugged in. It's completely free to use. And when you turn it on, it is automatically tuned to one specific channel. Now, the landlord says, hey, you are entirely free to unbolt this TV, buy a different one, or even just change the channel.
So there are no locks, no technical restrictions at all.
None whatsoever. But realistically, at the end of a long day of moving boxes, when you just want to sit on the couch and zone out, how many of us are actually going to bother getting out the toolbox to take that TV off the wall?
Almost nobody. We just watch the channel that's already playing.
Exactly.
And that captures the core of the DOJ's argument perfectly. In your scenario, Google is effectively paying the landlord to ensure their television is the one bolted to the wall before you even sign the lease.
Right.
According to the lawsuit, Google uses a vast network of distribution agreements. We're talking revenue-sharing payments that reach into the billions of dollars annually.
Billions with a B.
Billions. Paying firms like Apple, Samsung, browser developers, mobile wireless carriers.
And they're paying these massive sums for one very specific privilege, right?
Yeah.
Just be pre-installed.
To be pre-installed and set as the absolute default search engine right out of the box. They are literally buying the exclusive right to be the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Because they understand the psychology of the consumer perfectly. The EconWorks post breaks this down into a behavioral model that they call the locked-in loop.
I want to dig into that, Luke, actually, because the government acknowledges that users are technically free to change these settings. Like, I can go into my phone settings right now, tap a few buttons, and change my default search engine to something else.
It takes maybe, 10 seconds?
Yeah, 10 seconds max.
You can do that. But behavioral economics proves overwhelmingly that you won't. The friction of those 10 seconds, the cognitive load of having to make a choice, navigate a menu, alter a setting. It's just enough friction to deter the vast majority of people.
We just stick to the defaults.
We stick to the defaults. And the loop works in a very specific sequence, which the source outlines really clearly. First, there's the contractual agreement, right? The billions paid to the device maker.
Right.
That translates directly into the default setting on the device. And because it's the default, it naturally captures the user's everyday usage.
And then that continuous passive usage creates the lock-in effect.
Exactly.
We just leave the TV on the channel it came with.
And that is the brilliance of the strategy. The contractual arrangements are shaping downstream usage patterns entirely in the absence of any actual technical restrictions.
So they don't have to lock us in.
They don't need to build a firewall to block you from using a rival search engine. They just rely on the mathematical certainty that you probably won't bother looking for one.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because, wait, if the door isn't locked and I can change my default browser in 5 seconds, why is Google willing to pay literally billions of dollars just to save me a few taps?
It seems disproportionate, right?
It does. I mean, I'm just one person searching for a pancake recipe. What is that one tap actually worth to them? How does this seemingly small behavioral bias justify that kind of massive investment?
What's fascinating here is that we have to fundamentally shift how we value a search query. When you search for that pancake recipe, you probably think the value exchange is just, Google showing you an ad alongside the ingredients.
Right, the sponsored link at the top.
Exactly. But it is so much deeper than just serving an advertisement to one extra set of eyeballs. It is about data ingestion.
Data ingestion.
Yeah. The EconWorks piece breaks this down into the mechanics of what they call the data feedback loop.
Okay, how does that feedback loop actually work under the hood? Because understanding why that data is so valuable seems to be like the linchpin of the whole case.
It really is. Let's trace the life cycle of a search. The source breaks it down into 4 distinct stages: placement, usage, data, and quality. When a search engine secures that default placement on millions of smartphones, it starts receiving a massively disproportionate share of the world's total search queries. And every single one of those queries is a behavioral data point.
So if I type in best pizza near me, and I click the third link, realize the restaurant is closed, hit the back button, and click the first link, the system is absorbing all of that micro-behavior.
Down to the millisecond. The platform sweeps up millions of these daily interactions. Think about spelling errors.
Oh, yeah.
If someone types how to fix a leaky faucet with terrible spelling, the engine knows exactly what they meant. Not because it inherently understands bad spelling, but because 10,000 other people made that exact same typo, hit enter, and eventually click on a link for a plumbing hardware store.
Wow.
The engine learns which links satisfy the user's intent and which ones cause them to hit the back button frustration.
It's kind of like a navigation app then, like Waze. Waze isn't better because its maps are prettier. It's better because millions of drivers are passively reporting traffic jams in real time just by driving around with their phones on.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it.
Like a new map app could have a beautiful interface, but without the drivers on the road, it will confidently send you straight into a gridlock.
Exactly. Without the users, a search engine is just a static index of the internet. The users are the active ingredient that creates the quality. And this brings us to the core of that data feedback loop.
Okay.
The system uses that massive ocean of ingested past searches to constantly refine and train its machine learning algorithms.
So more usage generates more behavioral data.
And more behavioral data significantly improves the algorithm performance, creating result improvement at scale. And when the results are genuinely better, the user relies on the service even more.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
The default setting isn't just some static billboard. It is the very top of a massive, self-sustaining data funnel. The feedback loop reinforces our reliance on it because the product legitimately does get better the more we use it.
And that scale is critical because of something called the long tail of search.
What's that?
Well, roughly 15% of all searches processed every single day have never been seen before.
Wait, never?
Never. They are completely new strings of words. People ask very weird, specific questions.
That's wild. 15% every day.
Yeah. And to accurately guess what a user wants when they type something entirely unprecedented, an algorithm needs an unfathomable amount of historical context.
Right.
Only a system ingesting billions of queries a day has the contextual pattern recognition to handle that 15% effectively.
But hold on. I need to step into the shoes of the listener for a second here, because my search results are lightning fast. I almost read my mind sometimes.
They're incredibly good.
Yeah. So if this setup is giving me an amazing free product, why is the government stepping in at all? I mean, isn't a smarter, faster, free search engine just a massive win for me? Why is it a monopoly problem if the product is excellent?
And that right there is the million-dollar question. If we
Yeah.
connect this to the bigger picture, we hit the exact tension of the case, the scale squeeze.
The scale squeeze.
Okay, a data feedback loop is fantastic for the incumbent, the company that already has the scale, but it creates an absolutely insurmountable wall for any potential new entrant trying to break into the market.
So it's not just about the incumbent getting better, it's about everyone else being physically unable to catch up no matter how good their ideas are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about the disparity between the incumbent and a hypothetical startup. On one side, you have the established player sitting on mountains of historical data, fine-tuning their algorithms every millisecond based on the behavior of billions of people. On the other side, you have a new entrant. This rival might have a brilliant team of engineers. They might even have a fundamentally superior foundational technology or a better way of organizing information.
But they don't have the default placement.
Right, because they don't have that default placement, they have very few users. And because they have few users, they are starved of data.
And without the data, the algorithm can't learn.
Exactly.
If they can't see the typos, they can't correct them. If they can't see what links people click, they don't know how to rank them.
Which means they literally cannot compete on performance. The results simply won't be as good, especially on those obscure long-tail searches we talked about.
Right, the weird 15%.
Yeah. So when users try the new entrant and get subpar results, what do? They naturally huddle back behind the incumbent.
Because it just works better.
They flock to the established player because it gives them the best answers, proven by data. The outcome is that competition is effectively blocked. The entrant fails, not because they had a bad idea, but because they lacked the scale required to train their idea.
It's a catch-22. You need users to get the data to make your search engine good, but you need a good search engine to attract the users in the first place.
Precisely.
And the incumbent has essentially bought up the only bridge over that gap by paying to be the default on everyone's phone.
And that is why the government is arguing that those billion-dollar default agreements are inherently anti-competitive. They aren't just buying convenience. They are buying the oxygen, the data that any rival would need to survive.
So what does this all mean when we look at this through the lens of the listener, the person just trying to use the internet to find a decent cup of coffee or research a medical symptom? What are the actual stakes here?
It's a great question.
Because we've got the DOJ saying this is illegal monopolization, and we've got critics saying it's just normal, highly effective business. Can you impartially lay out both sides of this debate for us?
Yeah, I think this raises an important question about how we define consumer harm in the 21st century.
Yeah.
The EconWorks material is very careful to outline both perspectives objectively because it really is a complex philosophical divide.
Okay, let's start with the government.
On the DOJ side, they concede that consumers aren't paying higher monetary prices for search. They get that it's free, but they argue that the harm is indirect, structural, and long-term.
How does that structural harm actually hurt me, the user, like on a day-to-day basis?
Well, by using these default agreements to starve rivals of data, the incumbent dramatically reduces competition. And reduced competition eventually leads to fewer meaningful alternatives in the market.
So we just have fewer choices.
Right. And without the threat of a rival stealing their user base, the incumbent has less incentive to innovate. It can lead to a slower pace of technological advancement across the entire sector, and crucially, it can lead to diminished privacy protections over time.
Oh, that makes sense. If there is no rival threatening to steal your users by offering a more private, secure search experience that doesn't track their data, why would you bother building one?
Exactly. You own the market anyway, so you can dictate the terms of privacy however you see fit.
So the harm is what doesn't exist.
That is the crux of the government's stance. The harm is the better, more private, more innovative search engines that were starved of data before they could ever reach you.
Okay, but what about the critics?
Right. At the same time, critics of the government's case make a very compelling counter-argument based on the realities of a free market. They argue that these default agreements are not malicious at all. They are simply a reflection of legitimate competition for distribution.
Because companies have always paid for premium placement, right?
Yeah.
Like the cereal aisle argument.
Exactly like the cereal aisle. A major cereal brand pays a grocery store for eye-level shelf placement. The store gets revenue, the brand gets visibility, and the consumer gets convenience.
Right.
Critics of the lawsuit emphatically point out that in the digital realm, the switching cost is virtually zero. If you don't like the eye-level cereal, you just reach your arm down to the bottom shelf.
Takes 2 seconds.
Exactly. If a consumer genuinely prefers a different search service, they are entirely free to navigate to a settings menu and switch.
And if they don't reach for the bottom shelf, it just means they are perfectly happy with the cereal at eye level.
That is the critic's primary defense. The fact that consumers choose not to switch shouldn't be penalized as a legal monopolization. It simply proves the incumbent offers a highly superior product that people are satisfied with.
So they're saying, don't punish success.
Right. They argue you shouldn't punish a company for building a product so good and distributing it so effectively that people don't want to leave.
It seems like we are trapped between two different timelines here. We have the immediate reality of right now, where the product is great, versus the hypothetical reality of a decade from now.
The conclusion of the EconWorks piece brilliantly identifies this exact tension. It is a battle between short-term improvements in product quality and long-term competitive dynamics.
Yeah.
Today, right now, the data feedback loop makes your search results incredibly accurate. You get exactly what you were looking for in milliseconds.
Which we all love.
We do. But tomorrow, or 5 years from now, that same insurmountable data moat might be the reason a revolutionary new technology, maybe something even better than traditional search altogether, dies in the crib.
Because it could never get the initial baseline of user data it needed to prove its concept.
Precisely. The argument is that we are trading long-term market diversity for short-term fictionless convenience.
Wow. So to recap the journey we've just been on today, we started by dismantling our old ideas of what a monopoly looks like, moving from price tags and factories to the invisible behavioral architecture of our smartphones.
Yes, the path of least resistance.
Exactly. We looked at how massive billion-dollar distribution agreements secure default placement, leveraging our natural human tendency to just use whatever is put in front of us, like the TV bolted to the wall.
Right. And building on that, we explored how that locked-in usage feeds a massive data ingestion machine. Every typo, every click, every back button press trains the algorithm, making the incumbent practically unbeatable while systematically starving any new competitors of the data oxygen they need to survive.
And all of this culminates in a massive legal and philosophical debate over what actually constitutes consumer harm. Is it the loss of future innovation and privacy, or is it just highly effective, legitimate business in an era where data is king?
It's a tough question to answer.
It really is. The next time you buy a new device or download a fresh web browser and you do that initial setup, you aren't just looking at a screen of convenient options. You are looking at the front lines of a multi-billion-dollar war.
Yeah.
You are looking at an ecosystem entirely designed around your behavioral biases.
Because every default setting is a choice that was made for you, usually paid for by someone who understands exactly how valuable your daily habits are to their algorithmic machinery.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over today, building on that tension between the short term and the long term. If scale and data are the ultimate insurmountable barriers to entry in today's digital world, and if we willingly stick to those preset defaults simply because it's convenient for us today, are we inadvertently casting a vote to limit our own choices?
It's a scary thought.
It is. By sticking to defaults today, are we ensuring there will be no alternatives tomorrow? Next time you click Accept Default Settings, ask yourself, are you just saving 3 seconds of your time, or are you casting a vote for who controls the future of the internet? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.